Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Worship Leader Podcast, brought to you by Worship Leader Magazine. And I don't know if you have heard already, but Worship Leader Magazine is now a free digital publication that if you go to worshipleader.com, you can check it out. Or if you go to worshipleader.com, while you're there, just sign up and have it delivered straight to your inbox. So my name is Steve, and this is my wife, Sean.
Hey, everybody.
And we are so excited to be your hosts for this podcast. And we've actually been involved with Worship Leader Magazine now for quite some time.
Yeah, years.
We've taught at a lot of the conferences, so maybe some of you have taken some of our classes. We also wrote articles, and I did album reviews for a while, and then head up all the gear reviews at this moment. And so we're excited to be able to take all of this information, all the people that we've been meeting, and bring it to you, worship leaders, just like you, who are watching from different parts of the country, or maybe even from different parts of the world. And for us, we've been involved in worship now.
Yeah, 25 years.
We were adding it up the other day, and I was like, how is that possible?
We did start in high school, so that matters.
So don't age us too fast, too quickly.
Yeah, we didn't know each other then, but individually,
it was happening.
We were leading worship when we were in high school.
Yeah, and you were working as helping your dad, one of those kids that are just like, hey, you're part of the family, you're part of the worship team.
My dad was a worship pastor, and yep.
Yeah, and
do it all.
We've led at camps and conferences, ran the department there at our church for a long time that we were on staff at, and really thought we would be there forever until God started and called us out to traveling ministry. And so we've been to churches of all shapes and sizes across the country, even parts of the world.
Yeah.
And in all the experience and things that we've learned and seen, one thing that we have found to be true is that there is always something new to learn. And
sometimes it just takes a moment of revelation to be like, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. And just learning from new people and having conversations with different people from different areas of the worship world has really been fun. And so we're bringing a lot of that to you.
And that's really our hope and our prayer for you, that in each episode, no matter who it is, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you've never heard of, that there'll be some nugget, some piece of gold in there that is really going to open up that revelation that will help you in different areas. And so, for us being worship leaders, talking with other worship leaders, hopefully for you worship leaders out there, that we're going to be asking the questions you're looking to ask, and it's going to help us all do what God's called us to do just that much better.
And get to the next level.
Yeah, and that's the thing. God's called us to do it, and He's going to equip us to do it, and we're happy to be a part of that. And so for our first episode, our very first one, we were honored to sit down with Matt Maher. He actually came to our house and
played on this piano right here.
Piano right behind us. And I know many of you are going to instantly recognize him and know his music and have heard his artistry. But others of you may not realize that you have probably sang one of his songs in this last year, because he co-writes quite a bit of popular worship music. And so
he wrote Grace, Your Grace Is Enough.
That's a big one.
He wrote that one. And Lord, I Need You, he was part of that song. So I'm sure you know some of his music.
And so besides being a writer and an artist, he is a great musician. He was actually classically trained through college. And so we got him to come and not only talk about his story, we talked about theology, we talked about songwriting, but then we actually had him play through some of his songs and talk about how would a classically trained pianist go from, not having sheet music to playing some of these pieces, and then how would you do that in a group versus by yourself, and just had a lot of fun, because Matt really has a depth of wisdom and knowledge in his faith, and certainly in what he's doing is very intentional. He's a cerebral kind of guy, and really reminded me a lot of my best friend from high school. So we just had a great time, had a lot of laughs, and are excited to present that to you. But I also want to tell you, make sure you stay to the end, because we got him to share some of his funny worship fails. And
yes, you don't want to miss that.
They're pretty funny. So without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Matt Maher. Well, hey, this is Steve, and this is Sean. We're here with Matt Maher.
Hey, how's it going?
And thank you for coming and joining us. We're sitting around the piano because you are a piano player.
That's why I came. You have a giant, nice piano in your house, so.
That's probably why we bought the house, actually.
Yeah.
I was like, "There's room for the piano." Yes. All right.
Good to go. So I know a lot of people would instantly recognize you, but one thing that we've been asking everybody, which has been very interesting, is when people ask you, "What do you do?"
What do you
What do you tell people?
I chase after my kids. That's kind of what I do. Yeah.
It's 90%.
How many
Yeah,
kids do you have?
I have 3.
3.
Wow.
Yeah, 3, almost 6 and 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
so
fun.
yeah, so that's a full-time job, and in between I write songs and lead worship, maybe just to keep my sanity, or no, they're probably my sanity, and that's the stuff that drives me crazy. But no, I've been in Nashville now for going on 7 years.
Wow.
And my wife and I moved here so we could be closer to her family. She grew up in Western New York. I grew up in Canada, but I've been in Phoenix for like 18 years. So.
Well, like many Canadians.
Yes.
You end
Phoenix is
In Phoenix, of all places.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Canadians actually go there in the wintertime.
Oh,
yeah.
They call them snowbirds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, we went there for a Coyotes hockey game.
Did you really?
And they were playing Edmonton, and there was more Edmonton fans.
fans.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Like,
Where are we?
Yeah.
So, tell us about growing up in Canada. Are you a big poutine eater? I mean,
I did a little bit. Newfoundland just kind of has like its own sort of like cultural dishes, if you will, that still involve potatoes, but fried fish, French fries, and then what they would do is it's sort of the dish would be called chips, dressing, and gravy. And so what it was potato French fries with like turkey dressing or chicken dressing, and then gravy poured all over the whole thing.
That sounds amazing.
It actually really good. Yeah, it actually comes now with a serving of Lipitor for your cholesterol, which is nice.
On the side, that's good.
On the side, yeah.
There is something about gravy in the north. We were just in Canada this spring, and everything has gravy, and I loved it.
It's because it's so cold. It's insulation.
It's not gonna happen.
It's like spray foam for your insides. So
that's awesome. So did you guys vacation down there and ended up then, because you went to school at ASU?
Yeah, so my mother was American, and she kind of lived all over. She was a Navy brat, and her parents had retired in northern Arizona. There's a town in northern Arizona called Snowflake, which I always think is hysterical. So it's
the farthest thing from
exactly.
Snow.
Yeah,
it's intended to be sarcastic.
Yeah. So my parents got divorced in '95, and my mom wanted to be closer to her parents. They were getting older. She'd just been through a scare a couple of years previous where her mother had like quadruple bypass surgery.
Oh wow.
So she decided to make the move and kind of start over. And it was rough. Like it's stuff that you don't even like. There was just a lot of personal change and stuff that it just anybody's, when marriages end, it's just really, really difficult. So she kind of made that move, and right at the last minute, I was going to stay there. I just felt like I needed to go. And I didn't go to church really at the time. I grew up going to church on Sundays, born and raised Catholic, but I just kind of stopped going in high school. And it really just didn't mean that much to me, I guess.
Yeah.
There's probably 1,000,001 reasons, that you could maybe articulate. I think I grew up at a time when, especially in that part of the country, faith and Christianity, it was something that was much more like a cultural touch point. It was something that you kind of participated in key moments of your life, whether it's like, you go to Christmas and Easter, or you go to church, and then you end up at a wedding, and you end up at a funeral, and somebody gets their kid baptized or christened, and so church becomes this thing that you kind of check in with, like every couple of years.
Yeah, especially in the western part. Yeah. We found out, we lived in Colorado for a long time. It was like you either were Christian or you were not.
Yeah. So that's what it was like for me in Canada. But when I moved to Arizona, my cousin, who had moved 10 years earlier, actually was part of this really dynamic faith community.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And it turned out that there was like a charismatic community within the boundaries of this parish, which was probably, I think, one of the reasons why it was such a dynamic parish. So I was there for a year. I ended up full-time on staff at another Catholic church for 13 years.
Wow.
So I finished my degree, got a degree in jazz performance on piano
That's awesome.
at Arizona State.
Love that.
And that was not something I'd planned. I wasn't like a huge, jazz player. I took a jazz piano studio class, and I was practicing. Well, I was a piano major.
Yeah.
So I just kind of put in enough work to fool the director. I think the director of the department had a soft spot for me because he was also a Christian, and I think he just knew that I was obviously gonna be in music, But it was hard. It was hard finishing a college degree.
I
Especially,
did the same degree. Actually,
really?
just not jazz, but
Not jazz.
classical.
Yeah, it's hard because I think it's like so academic, and there's so much discipline involved in terms of like the amount of practice that's involved.
Can you still play some of the pieces? Could you
Oh,
break off
gosh.
something for us right now? A little jazz number?
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure. That was
No,
really
that's
good.
pretty,
fun.
that's pretty good.
No, that was terrible.
That's the thing about jazz is you're just like it's intended. You just
It's all there. So fun.
Yeah, I need to practice more of this with this helps me. Maybe.
So fun.
with my wife being a piano major, it's funny because she still plays the things that she learned, but it was so many hours of practice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours.
And that's the hard thing that I think for me was there was kind of a conscious choice where I was either pursuing being the best that I could at playing the piano and playing jazz standards and trying to master that instrument. But then I got involved in youth ministry. And so there was a point where it's like you're either spending time just in ministry, which is mostly relationships. So it's a lot of time just spending time with people.
It takes time.
And I felt more and more called to that. And so it was really hard. It was even hard just finishing the degree because there's so many times I wanted to drop out. And then I was spending
we got married in the middle, so
Well, I was spending
like, yes, finish.
Yeah, I was spending so much time like trying to figure out how to play the guitar because that was the thing too, where it's like
Yeah, music was totally different space.
I was trying to figure out how to play like Open the Eyes of My Heart and like in that open E chord progression that Paul Balash used to play. So that's what I spent. I would spend 3 hours a day practicing the piano, but then I would go home to my apartment. I would spend 2.5 hours trying to play Delirious and Paul Balash and Daryl Evans and early Passion stuff, and then I was at a Bible study for teenagers at the church that I worked at, leading worship, and so it just became a thing where that was so much more obvious to me that was my calling. And it was probably because I really just wasn't that great at piano playing. I've managed to fool everyone.
Well, and you find out in those environments like how amazing somebody
The
can
next
be.
level, the next
Oh.
level.
Well, and jazz is like a religion. It
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
No, it is, and
Yeah.
there's like a whole. It's an all-encompassing feel of music that you kind of dive headfirst into.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with studying classical music. I had a lot of friends who were performance majors, and you're really like to get into like the pedagogy of it and the discipline of it and the philosophy of it. It's a lifelong endeavor. And I think for me, I stumbled into writing songs about my faith, and then particularly songs at church, and that was where I hit my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So talk about the Catholic Charismatics and I know for us in our Protestant, we have all of our different groupings, but there's even within the Catholic Church much different groupings, and then how did they receive the modern praise and worship style that you were bringing as compared to what we're doing, and how that would
Well,
work
I mean,
on Sunday? Or...
Yeah, I think a lot of it was I was just formed by just going to these prayer meetings, a handful of them, and kind of getting immersed in the sense of that there was a history and a tradition, like to the renewal period, which was like in the late 60s and 70s, that was happening simultaneously as the Jesus movement kind of happened. A lot of people tend to think of that as just an evangelical expression. The reality is that there was a charismatic renewal of the whole
That's awesome.
Christian church everywhere. Is really what happened. I think is that it's like you could probably say that it's safe to say when it talks about God says I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh.
Yeah.
A lot of us.
Baptists.
No, and not just a bunch of hippies in Southern California. It was like it was everywhere. I think that's where like if you look in the '60s, there were all of a sudden they were doing these folk masses. There was a lot of innovation musically happening within the Catholic Church, and then it just hit a wall. And some of that is just like it's like a whole different podcast. Really and honestly, different conversation about the use of technology in church, and is there a limit to how much technology should you use versus how much stuff should just be like, for lack of a better term, organic.
Right.
I think what I've learned is that everyone, every group, every denomination, every clique within Christianity ends up developing a songbook of songs that they know and they love, and it sort of travels with that generation. And then typically what happens is that generation gets older, and then they look back at the younger people, and the younger people are singing these new songs. And they're like, well, we don't understand any of these new songs. These aren't as good as our songs. Remember, our songs these songs are awesome. I'm not too sure about those songs. And that sort of has happened for decades and decades and centuries. And now we have people who love songs that were written 250 years ago, and we have people who love songs that were written 500 years ago, and we have people who love songs that were written 15 years ago. And I think that there's all sorts of discussions about what's a congregational song supposed to do, like functionally what it's supposed to do, theologically what is it supposed to do. So I think for charismatics, whether you're Pentecostal or you're Catholic charismatic or whatever, I think songs they're the framework, if you will, for prayer. But they're kind of like a playground. Does that make sense? And so I think most people who have more of a spirit-filled understanding of like corporate worship, prayer, singing, the idea that the Spirit of God actually interacts with us as we're praying and singing on an active level. I think people who come from that background tend to look at songs as sort of being, it's like if you bordered a playground with a fence. Like the fence is the song structure in a way, and then it's like, well, what happens within it, and it's like depending on what church you're at or what background you're part of. Some older, it's like I remember some people loved singing in tongues because they love praying in tongues because that's like a really big part of it, right? Then you get to it like another generation 15, 20 years later, and they get real apprehensive about it because none of their friends go to church. And their friends are like, why are you people babbling in it like what sounds like a weird language? So then they don't do it anymore, but then eventually something else breaks out, which is like, oh, well, we're going to sing spontaneous stuff, but we're just going to use language that's more abstract or artistic or less biblically influenced. And you know what I mean? We're going to, sing about, planetary structures or
over
and over. But we're going to do, and there's a community in France called Taizé. It's a monastic community of mostly Reformed monks.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And their charism is they sing, it's kind of like the Moravian tradition, I think. Like they just sing parts of scripture.
Wow.
like just over and over and over and over.
Just put melody to it.
Yeah, they just put a melody to it and they sing in it. They sing in harmonies and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, and like you hear like a 10-minute version of a song now, and it's like, why are these people just singing the chorus over and over again? It's like, because that actually goes all the way back to like Judeo-Christian.
Yeah.
Like
right.
it goes back to Judaism.
Yeah.
Singing the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Get it in you.
Yeah, I mean the Eastern Orthodox, every Easter sing this passage, Christ is risen from the dead, trampling over death by death and redeeming us from the grave. That's where the song Christ is risen that I wrote came from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, and that's what they do. They march around their church, which is a very charismatic thing to do.
It is.
You would not think of that
Orthodox.
when you think about Orthodox, like literally the name Orthodox.
It's
that
like,
it would, yeah, that's you think of like a really neatly confined box.
yeah.
But yet they march around a church, singing that.
Oh.
So it, I guess to answer your question, I think the church as a whole is always caught in the tension of trying to receive like fresh ideas and fresh ways of doing things. Those are kind of like methods, but what we're saying and what we're trying to communicate, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right. Nothing new.
No.
You're so correct. Yeah,
So that, that's kind of pretty much what I did. Was I was part of that community, and then I worked at a church for 13 years, and I started writing songs, and eventually some of them, I guess, were relatable, I think, enough in a way that other artists or other worship leaders wanted to record them, and then that opens the door, and then you pray about it and say, well, is this am I supposed to walk through this, or am I just supposed to ignore it? And then next thing you know, I live here and I chase around my kids, and when I'm not doing that, I'm still trying to write songs.
So how many songs are you writing like a week, would you say?
Oh man, it's not a lot. I'm not. I just tend to now, I think, it goes in spurts. Mm-hmm. So there's songs that like I've started that I've been working on for months. Mm-hmm. Like I got a new song that I'm actually later today I'm supposed to get a mix of.
Great.
And I started it in April, and I just finished it like a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like the kind of the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
The music part came, but I find myself more and more kind of wrestling with lyrics. Because I think if you're gonna say something simple, I'm just trying to be real as specific as I can about it. It's funny, people, sometimes people, especially within Christianity these days, tend to be so hypercritical of the lyrics of modern worship music. Yeah. But and they just think it's like, it's so simple to write a song like that. Yeah. I'm like, it's easy to throw a bunch of words together, but the problem is that the human heart tends to tell when someone's lying. Yeah. My kids especially. So I can't explain it, but there is a level of intentionality that's like hyper focused in terms of writing congregational music. Yeah. Because it's like one of the only genres of music where like the words matter.
It really matters.
They really, really matter. Yeah. Like you're not just trying to like throw out, here's a feeling or here's an image. It's, because it immediately gets thrown into, well, we're all going to try to pray this, or we're all going to read this together, which in and of itself is like an act of prayer. Yeah. So, so that song, it's called Lord of My Life. And,
can you give us a little sample?
Yeah.
Don't do the whole thing, but just whet our appetite.
Sky without a north star, a ship without an anchor, caught up in the current. My heart is prone to wander. All the roads I've taken lead me back to nowhere. And you're the destination, and you're the way to thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm always, I can't help not find phrases that are kind of part of church lingo.
Yeah. It's
And,
woven into the
and try to well, just try to re-examine it. So just I grew up Catholic. People never said, "Can I tell you about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ?" Yeah. And now the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought, I don't understand why it became that way. Yeah. Because it makes so much sense to me. Like, I recognize Jesus as my Savior. Yeah. Before I allowed him to be my Lord. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I think is true for most people.
Which I think is true for most people. So that's the part that I always find weird, where it's just like, can I tell you about the Lord of my life? The guy who's in complete control of my life. Oh, and by the way, he saved it. I'm like, you'd never make someone your Lord before you recognize or made them or recognize that they were your Savior,
Not willingly.
Yeah. Nah, not willingly. And so it's like, I think for me it was, and I think at this point in my life too, I'm coming to understand the distinction. I think people look at Jesus as a lot of things. And I think in worship especially we do. We're so quick to want to say he's friend, he's confidant, he's journeyman, he's counselor, he's unconditional love, acceptance, he's mercy, he's forgiveness, he's all those things. But to say he's Lord,
it requires something on us.
There's another level of surrender, I mean, there's a reason why Jesus Take the Wheel was such a great song. And I think because it communicated something on an unconscious level of like, and that's the thing, this buddy of mine who taught like New Testament, or he taught the whole Bible narratively in Phoenix at the church that I worked at. Yeah. He used to talk about how rabbinical Messianic Jews, when they look at the Old Testament, every time there's the Lord is referenced in the Old Testament, that's a reference to Jesus. Yeah.
It's like metaphor and shadow.
Yeah, it's just like the preeminent, or the preeminent Christ. And so
they wouldn't even say his name, right?
No,
they wouldn't say his name.
No. Yeah. But so there is something significant about calling Jesus Lord.
Yeah.
And,
one of the most challenging scriptures is when Jesus is like, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and yet you don't do the things I do?" And every time, or things I ask you, and every time I read that, I'm just like, okay. Next level, like,
back to the basics.
I was doing pretty good.
Yeah. No, it's very true. So I think, that was the thing for me with like, so an example would be like, writing a song like that. Lord, I Need You, though, was written in 15 minutes.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I wish, maybe not 15 minutes. Maybe it was over the span of like an hour, like between 15 and 90. Like it was written in a morning. Yeah. The whole thing, it just came together so unbelievably fast. We were sitting around a picnic table, like not too much bigger than this piano. And it was just a very quick collaborative process. And songs just don't all come like that. No, I wish they did. I would be way more productive.
Yeah. We all would be.
Yeah.
Snap, it's done.
I have a lot of friends who push back on me and tell me, I've got friends who are in like different areas of like, entertainment. Yeah. Like writers, TV and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're always telling me like, hey, can you just write what you feel? Do you always have to like make it some sort of like didactic song about faith? Like, can't you just like do something more autobiographical, And I think part of me wants to, but at the same time, it's like, I have a deep amount of respect for people who can write that way. Yeah. Because they are really wordsmiths. And so I think I'm still getting my feet wet in terms of like learning how to articulate my faith and how I feel about that before diving into like the whole of like the human experience. Yeah.
So in a writing session, some people are chord people, some people are like melody, and some people are lyrics, some people are just, they handle the production, the sound of it. Are you stronger in one or another, would you say? Or who do you
What
end up-
comes easier for you?
I hate to say this. It depends on the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some days where I walk into a session and I'm like going, lyrics aren't creatively coming, so I usually switch gears. And I think that's one of the things I would like encourage people to learn how to do. It's like develop one or two skills so that if one isn't firing on all cylinders, you can just say, okay, that's not working today. I'm gonna do this. And there's lots of things that you can do creatively in terms of like freeing up yourself creatively. There's a book called Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattinson, who's a teacher at Berkeley.
Right.
And I just got it because John Mayer said he read it every year.
There you go.
So I went and got it, and I've been reading it, and it's really, really good.
Good.
And it approaches the idea of lyric writing as it is a muscle that you can exercise, and that you just have to put the work in. And
people talk about that a lot in songwriting. They're like, you know, when you work out for athletics or whatever, like you don't remember, you know, lift number 7 of the set or whatever, like, but it's training to get stronger. So then whenever you're doing something athletic or you come across a burning car that needs to be flipped over, you know,
you can do it.
those are memorable moments. And so a lot of people aren't willing to put in the time songwriting, just writing songs that no one will ever hear, no one will ever remember, songs that won't turn out. But then when it comes to that moment, you know, then it's like, oh, hey, I'm in a room with talented people, or just whatever comes together, and I know what that lyric's supposed to be. And so give us an idea of, like, just guess, how many songs have you written in this year, or even
Oh,
the course
man.
of your life?
I mean, this year it's probably, I think this year I've probably co-written over 30, 40.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that I never give myself a number of like, I need to write this many this year.
Yeah.
But I actually know I do have a lot of songs left in me this year. I can tell.
Yeah.
Last year I kind of took it easy. So, so I mean, I think it, you know, the sense of like, how many songs am I going to write, or, you know, anything like that. I mean, I think as you're growing, it's like what you said, it's exercise. You got to exercise the muscle, you got to work it out.
Yeah.
And then I think it, you know, I'll hear production ideas, but I'm not a massive track guy, you know. I'm stumbling around still, which is dumb because like we live in the day and age, you can pretty much learn how to do I could learn how to fly a jet on the internet, and like I can't, and this is what I do for a living, and I'm like, how do I get?
Just let the people that are good at it do
Well, in
it.
this town, like your barista's better at it.
I know, it's so funny. Yeah, it's like, hey, do you have time to tune a vocal later?
Melodyne, you know?
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Matt Maher giving us some piano tips.
Well, I wanted to talk maybe, and probably why we're around the piano, is just so many people in churches are classically trained piano players who grew up with hymnals and written music, who are struggling mightily in our no music chord stuff. And I wondered if you could just kind of show what you're doing on some of your songs, and then like how you would play them different, just to give people like some basic chord forms.
Yeah, sure.
Like so,
I mean, I think the number one rule I've learned with playing in church, and it's not just even playing in church, it's just in every musical situation, is that less is more.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we can overplay.
Yeah.
I'm super guilty of it still. If I'm just playing just by myself and I'm singing, especially on piano, like I will overplay stuff way too much. You know, what I would say to piano players is that really what you're doing is you're just reinforcing harmonic information that's there, and occasionally maybe playing like some kind of counter melody or like tag note at the end of a chorus or at the intro of a song.
So give us an example of overplaying versus simplicity.
Yeah, so like you know, so Lord, I Need You, for example. So. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. And then when we get to the chorus, so that's kind of what I would say, like underplaying or just being sparse, or
so you're taking all the melody notes.
Yeah, you're just taking all the notes, you know. And I think piano player, like every musician, depending on like if it's a guitar player or if it's an acoustic guitar player, I think a lot of times we, you know, I think especially when you're learning how to play in an ensemble, one of the things that you don't necessarily, no one hands you a manual with like 5 rules, but one of the rules is like if you can't actively hear what everyone else is playing, you're probably playing too much.
Yay, that's what we tell people.
So what I would say, it's like if you can't, if whatever it is that you're playing is so complicated that you can't actually admire
right.
what the bass player or what the drummer or like whatever someone else is doing, then you're occupying too much of the space. Too much of the space.
Well, we run into a lot of people will then use in-ears not to hear other people,
but just to hear themselves.
Yeah, so then the problem, you can't even tell that you're doing it because you turn yourself up, everybody else down.
Yeah.
So for us, we play usually without monitors even at all sometimes, just for that purpose.
Yeah. So we want to hear what they're doing.
If I can't hear what I'm doing, then somebody's playing my part, or we're, you know, and then we work it out orchestrationally.
I've destroyed my hearing because I'm always have one in-ear out because I just want to hear the church. I just want to hear the room.
Yeah.
I just want to hear people sing. Like I spent 5 hours a day in a practice room for, you know, 6-7 years of my life, just listening to myself play, and it was not one iota as rewarding as writing a song and hearing the church sing. You know, so Because He Lives would be another great example, because that song's very like it's a little bit more rhythmic, but you know, there's this ostinato of play all that, you can go. So I think
parts of the electric or something.
Yeah, or the acoustic guitar player, you know, just kind of just stay out of the way. If you feel like you're literally like running down a hill and you can't slow down, you know what I mean? Then you don't have to play it. I think it's like. Always, I think the rule is always, you know, simpler is better.
Yeah.
You know.
So when you're playing a chord, you know, are you playing 1-3-5, 1-3-5 in each hand?
No, usually the bass it's like one note, or octaves.
Yeah.
You know, so like your grace is enough if you're, you know, because it's you know. That's the chorus. Someone's gonna go, and it's like you just yeah.
It's very different because it's him style, like because her grandma always yells at me when I get behind the piano. It's like play the melody in your right hand.
I know. All of a sudden you're in Walgreens, and it's playing in the background, and it is some of it's a generational mindset of like. But a lot of times, if I'm teaching a new song, I will sneak in the melody a little bit the first couple of times, just to kind of help people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then after a while, it's like you don't need to play. You don't have to just keep banging out the melody. I think especially with piano players, not feeling like they have to do that.
Yeah. And part of that, I think, is because they would sing the one hymn and they're not going to sing it again for sometimes another year.
Yeah.
Whereas we're more repetitive.
Yeah. They're
People
very
can
much.
learn the melody.
Well, I think the other thing too is that, especially if it's like you're a small church and it's like acoustic guitar and piano and percussion, the piano at that point, it's a harmonic instrument, but it also is a percussive instrument.
Yeah.
So the problem is if you're playing the melody, the funny thing about modern music is that there's usually some sort of syncopated or sense of syncopation that offsets from the melody to create a three-dimensional image, like picture of rhythm, like how the rhythm's supposed to function, right? And so if you're playing really hard for people to actually like clap. They don't, because there's no 2 and 4. Yeah, there's no 2 and 4. You know what I mean? So like. So just like off beats like that, you know, and then or even especially on the chorus, your grace is enough. Know what the time signature is. I can feel it from the music that's actually being played, so then I have something to kind of like base my movement on. Because if you don't give people that kind of information,
especially non-musicians,
they're just lost. And you know, because they're like, look man, this is not what I do for a living. Like, that's not even a hobby. Like I don't know, it's like
I play the radio.
Yeah, I play literally. That's the instrument I play. I play Spotify. So, yeah. I mean, I think like some of that stuff's like, it's just real. It's just probably more simple than you're maybe allowing it to be.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense.
We kind of tell people sometimes, like, if it doesn't sound like really stupid on its own, then you're playing too much. Like it should just sound like really empty and hardly.
If you dive in like the multi-tracks and stuff, sometimes you'll hear it'll be like this guitarist playing one note like over and over and over and over and over again. But like, you know,
but with everything else, it sounds good.
It's like, oh, that's genius.
Or when somebody's
that's like it's and I think some of it's the day and age in which we live. Music's gotten very, very minimalistic.
Yeah.
You know. And that's like a whole other conversation, you know, because pop music right now is super simplistic. But it's funny that a lot of worship music sometimes ends up being like a ton of information.
Yeah.
There ends up being like there's like 3 electric guitar parts, each one's playing like one note, and which isn't bad. But I think at the same time, like if you're at a church of 250 people, you're just trying to figure out how to sing the song. You know, the thing I would remind people, the most important instrument is the assembly. Yeah. Everyone's singing together. That's the most important instrument. So just do whatever you have to do to make that the most important thing. And then just make sure that you're singing the words in a way that everyone can actually understand it and hear it. Because those are like, that's the thing about worship music that makes it different. It's what the lyrics are talking about. You know, it's creating, it's painting a picture. It's creating an atmosphere. It's doing all these, you know, different things. And then probably the last thing would be just try not to get in the way.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, let them sing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get them singing.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Check out Matt Maher and. Got a website and
I'm sure I do. Not that anyone.
Instagram.
Yeah.
If you play music in different places, go check that out.
I have no cooking tips. I'm not a lifestyle brand, but occasionally I do talk about music.
Don't go anywhere. Matt Maher shares his worship fails right after this. The National Worship Leader Conference 2020 is coming to Nashville, Tennessee, July 21st through the 23rd. Join us for a night of worship followed by 2 days of breakout and general sessions that are sure to make an impact in your ministry. So head on over to worshipleader.com/NWLC to find out all the information, including this year's new schedule. And when you sign up, make sure you enter in the promo code PS2020, which will get you a 25% discount up until June 30th.
Worst time I ever bombed. It's kind of hard to nail that down because it tends to happen very frequently. I would say that when I worked at a church, whenever I led worship, my band had like bets on when I would hit my face with the microphone because I lose spatial awareness as I'm singing because usually my eyes are closed, which is kind of a terrible habit. Like when you think about it, because usually you're singing, you're communicating things, and most people when they communicate actually try to make eye contact with people. Not prolonged eye contact. That's rather strange, but just periodically like check. Hey, how you doing? How's your coffee this morning? Great, that's fantastic. Yeah, your kid. Yeah, you might want to change that. Whatever. But my eyes are closed, so usually my face would just randomly like hit the microphone and it would make that sort of thud. So that would happen at least one service a week. But probably the worst bomb I ever made was I was at this event in Sydney, Australia called World Youth Day. It happens every 3 years. The Pope invites people, and you can find this on the internet. I gave this like 10-minute long sort of like speech in between songs, felt very, kind of moved by the Holy Spirit. So then I go starting to play this song, it's on the piano, and it's like, and then the strings come in behind it, and it's like, I'm playing along with a track, and it's real pretty, and then I go in to lean in to sing, and I didn't have a piano bench. I had like 2 stacking chairs, and one was stacked on top of the other. When I leaned in to sing, the top one slipped and my hand went like that on the piano in front of 10,000 people. And then I squat because I thought the chair had fallen. So then I was playing a song, doing a full leg squat for about 40 seconds, and then my legs were shaking. It was really terrible. So you can probably find that if you give it a Google.